Hello. My name is Noel, or Noel, and the thing that you're watching here on the internets is a beta talk on BikeNYC tools, data, cameras, and the law. We have some lovely hashtags that I would like to point out. The first one is beta talks plural, unlike the hashtag that we had many years ago when it was singular. So we now go with the plural, beta talks. And if you could also be tagging things with BikeNYC. We know that there is good presence from the Twitterverse here, and Bike Twitter seems to be well represented. So please tweet, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, Facebook, what else? Snapchat, MySpace, OkCupid, Tinder, Grindr. Eventually, Lauren, we're going to get our online dating app called Woke, which will have a dedicated BikeNYC channel. So you have to go volunteer for biking organizations to get validated to eventually go dating and find cool people, right? See, it's a good app, right? You know, it's a good idea. So maybe we'll do like a BikeNYC dating singles night, and we'll figure things out. Anyway, welcome. Glad to see so many of you. I hope all of you are well fed. Hopefully you will not be going to sleep anytime soon. This is tonight's agenda. We are getting started a little bit early. So when it comes to the 7:30, so we're gonna first welcome you, have some lightning talks, then we're gonna have a little panel on cyclists with cameras, and then we're gonna end with our illustrious sponsor, Steve Vaccaro from the Vaccaro & White law firm, who's gonna talk to us about our actual rights on the road, seemingly. How many NYPD police officers are there that are, that are in the room? All right, and how many of them are badged? Do we know? What's 35,000 police officers, and it seems like each one has a different interpretation of the laws around bicycling. So this evening is going to be a little cheeky. We are going to be a little depressing when we talk about some numbers, stats, and tools. But before we get there, I'm going to be a little lighthearted to try to balance things out. This is how you spell my name. I'm from BetaNYC. It's a pleasure to have you out here. I am not alone from BetaNYC. We have Lauren Renee, who's from our leadership team. We have two of our Civic Innovation Fellows, Anaf and Siobhan, who have been volunteering out this evening. And then Kate, who's in the far back, who looks like she's in prison right now, will be doing a little bit of a lightning talk. And am I missing anyone else that's from our organization? Nope. Okay, great. And I know that many of you have some of you have volunteered at some of our events. So those of you who have attended BetaNYC events, how many of you have not attended a BetaNYC event before? Okay, great. Well, this is a little bit of an introduction to where you are and how we like to recognize where we are at. Many of us, if not almost all of us, are migrants and immigrants to the place that we're at. The Lenape, the Canarsie, there were many tribes that once inhabited these lustrous, fertile, beautiful islands that we call home. Many of them are not around to tell their story and to tell their vision of the world that we would like, or that they would like to experience. In the book, The Island of the Center of the World, there's a story of how the Dutch were really kind of like confounded by the statement that the Canarsie and the Lenape had, which was that if no one could own the sea nor the air, how could anyone own the land? And so the Dutch, this colony was founded based upon a capitalist idea. It was founded by a corporation, right? It was not founded by a country, but it was founded by a corporation. And they were like, this doesn't make any sense. And so At BetaNYC, we recognize the fact that we are on occupied soil, we are occupiers, we are immigrants, we are migrants, and that we want to respect the land, the sea, and the air, and that we want to make sure that it is around for many generations to come. We all know that we are part of a climate crisis, or in a climate crisis right now, and that we need to do what we can to make sure that we take care of each other as the world falls apart around us. This is the old New Amsterdam. Let's see here. On your right, you have Wall Street. That wall was built to keep out the indigenous people from New Amsterdam. We recognize that New York City was built by many struggles. Struggle for labor, struggle for suffrage, the struggle to break free from chattel slavery, the struggle to make sure that we had universal rights for everyone, could love anyone. And we want to also recognize that our fight, when we talk about technology, data, and design, is actually to tear down these walls and make sure that we make a place here in New York for everyone. So with that as our foundation, and we want to thank the organizations that have been able to bring us this beautiful event. First, we want to thank Jolly from the Internet Society. Hello, Internet. My quick plug is that if you work for an organization, if you run a meetup, if you run anything and you want to put it up on the internet, who do you call? Jolly. Exactly. Jolly at the Internet Society, and he will bring his amazing kit. And he has very affordable rates. The Internet Society is a great organization. It was founded essentially to make sure that the internet is open and available to all. And so if you're ever interested in live streaming anything, recording anything, please contact the Internet Society. They also run some really, really great events. So please take a look at the Internet Society. They have some wonderful meetups. Any meetups soon?
We're doing a cybersecurity thing in October.
Cybersecurity thing in October. Check out ISOC-NY.org.
Today I already did the Kenya Internet Governance Forum.
Man, you've been around the world already. Through the internet. Other organizations to thank is Vaccaro and White, who will be presenting a little bit later. They are the ones who sponsored the illustrious food, delicious fried food. Thank you. You're all on bikes, right? Or at least you can bike. Maybe that's an enableist mentality. But anyway, I hope you enjoy the food. Thank you for the sponsorship, Steve. And then Bushwick Generator, which is the roof literally over our head, who are providing the scaffolding outside that we can lock to. And so we're going to have Emmerich come up in a little bit to say thank you. But at least give a shout out and thank you to Emmerich. And I loved the food. So Jay, it's your turn to say 2 words about this amazing organization, Sustainable United Neighborhoods. How many of you live in the Bushwick area? All right, well, Jay, come on up. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. It's hard to start and get a crowd going, but who liked the acapulcos? They were gluten-free. That was important. I was told I had to have gluten-free. We had to have vegan. We had to have vegetarian. I hope we did. We represent the Moore Street Alliance. We also represent the Moore Street Market Merchants Association, La Marqueta de Williamsburg. It's an 80-year-old public market. It's right over here on Moore Street, 110 Moore Street. And tonight's meal was from Ramonitas. So we're all about local sourcing, making sure that when we do these kinds of events here at the Bushwick Generator, local dollars go into these local vendors' hands, make sure that we're supporting the families of Williamsburg and Bushwick. Briefly, Sustainable United Neighborhoods is our not-for-profit. We're one of the anchor not-for-profits here in the Bushwick Generator, and we're completely simpatico with everything that we just heard about with BetaNYC in terms of sustainability, ensuring that we have a climate, that we are protecting the whales, that we're doing these kinds of things. But really what we're trying to do is hashtag green jobs for all. making sure that that green economy and that low and medium income LMI outreach is occurring so that the funds don't necessarily fall into Westchester County all the time. That NYSERDA dollars can be to everybody, that we are going to be able to ensure that green jobs happen for not just one community, but that everyone has a chance to be part of this 22nd century economy. So part of that includes defining what we call green STEM. That's what's beyond STEM. You've all heard STEM. So we work very closely with hackathons. One of the big ones coming up is our H2 Hack, which is going to be with some high school students from around the area. H2O, H2 Hack. They're doing water projects, hacking issues of environmental concern and environmental justice. And then check us out at Governor's Island September 21st. We're going to be part of New York Climate Week with Future NYC and the Climate Reality Project, bringing in a ton of local artists, acts, spoken word, muralists, everybody from Brooklyn that wants to be a part of this climate conversation. Come check us out at Governor's Island September 21st. We're a part of that Future NYC Pavilion. So really excited to have you at the Generator. This is an innovation hub and center of, I think, amazingness that's going to happen. And we look forward to being a part of that with you. So thank you again, and looking forward to working with you.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Shay. And Emmerich is going to talk about Bushwick Generator here. How many of you came from the Bronx? Just a show of hands. All right, we got two. Staten Island. No, all right. Queens. All right. Manhattan. All right, and then how many of you from Brooklyn? Oh, nice. Jersey City. Our friends north of the Bronx. North of the Bronx. We got one from Connecticut. Oh! Anyone outside of that? All right. Well, thanks for everyone for coming here. This is the place that you're in.
Oh, great. Thank you, and welcome to the Bushwick Generator. First I just want to acknowledge BetaNYC and Noel for, clearly it's somebody who's stepped up and been a leader about a cause clearly everybody in this room cares about. He's not afraid to get in, and throw a few jabs and hooks in the political sphere. And so that's great, and it's great to have these leaders. This is the Bushwick Generator, and you're sitting in maybe 1 or 2% of what will be a larger development in this area. So this is like a sample space, when you come and show people what the finishes look like. So we are building what we believe is an innovation hub. I think it's interesting as it relates to kind of what you're concerned about and as it relates to mobility, really, because this is the first chance, in my opinion, to develop like really a true live, work, play, inclusive type of neighborhood. So that's what we think we can be. And I think it's very interesting that you're in the midst of a transformation of a manufacturing district and a warehouse district. So right across the street is Wonton. There's a stop sign right down there. I've called DOT to put a stop sign in, and they haven't gotten it done. So we're just, City Bike just came and put a rack right here. So we're just in the midst of this very contentious area between, innovations. There's really two things that are happening now. One, we're facing a digital divide on the economic mobility side, and people, want jobs and they want economic mobility. And then on the other side, we kind of have this stagnant warehouse kind of, manufacturing industry that's lobbying to keep the status quo. So we believe in economic development, and I think that meshes well with everything that you guys believe in. So I just want to send my condolences to the community of bikers and their families for the recent incidents. And I'd love, you guys can reach out on the website, bushwickgenerator.com, if you want to get a hold of me, and I'm glad to give you a tour, and we can see how we can collaborate. So I think on Twitter, our tagline is, show up to Bushwick Generator, influence it if you can, own it if you dare. So thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And we are so fortunate enough to have Asher Friedman from Antonio Reynoso. How many of you know Antonio Reynoso? Have seen him on your bike rides? Have seen you at City Council? What an amazing City Council member that represents this particular district. As part of the bike train, the Transportation Alternatives bike train, he's been showing up just to ride with us, just to really see. He was there at the very first one and took action, immediate action, when we went through underneath the BQE and the bike lane was completely blocked. This community, as pedestrians and cyclists and Williamsburg, Greenpoint, neighbors, and also a little bit of Ridgewood, right, a little bit of Queens, couldn't have a better advocate. And we're so fortunate enough to have one of his staff members, Asher Friedman. So Asher, can you come up and represent the office?
Thanks, Noel, and welcome everyone to the district. I work for Councilmember Reynoso. My name is Asher Freeman, and he represents the neighborhoods of Williamsburg, Bushwick, and a little bit of Ridgewood and Queens. So welcome to Williamsburg. We're really, really excited that you all are here. Big shout out to BetaNYC for putting this event together. This is huge, huge. Thank you. And I also want to just thank all the groups, all the cycling advocates that are here. We are in a public safety crisis right now. There is no question about it. We have cyclists dying at a rate that I never thought I would see. And it does not seem that we are going to ever see the action that we need from this mayor. It has been, frankly, appalling to see the inaction and that he is out in Iowa while people are dying here. There was an announcement, right? We're getting new bike lanes. We're supposed to get enforcement. I thought we got that with Vision Zero. It's simply not enough. What it does not acknowledge is what we have in this city, car culture. There is a culture that cyclists and pedestrians have no right to the road. That has to change. No matter how many bike lanes we put in, there is going to be no difference if we do not begin to change that culture. For the mayor to say that we are now going to start enforcing double parking in bike lanes, why wasn't that happening before? That has been the law for a long time. So we have to do a lot of organizing ourselves, and that's why events like this are so important, to begin calling attention to this and begin showing ourselves being visible. And I'm particularly excited to hear the conversation around cameras. That is critical. Public perception is so important in these conversations. You know, we've all seen the picture of the turtle with the straw in its nose, right? Everyone doesn't want to use straws now. We need to make these issues tangible for the general public, and cameras are going to be a big part of that. And it's also data. It's showing how many cyclists are out there, where they're going, where the dangerous intersections are. So all of these conversations are incredibly helpful for moving that policy forward, but we can't do that without the people on the ground. So I want to thank you again for all being here and being engaged in that conversation, and we look forward to working with you in the future on this. So thank you.
So we're going to start off after the introductions, we're going to start off with some presentations. These are lightning talks. They're supposed to be gauged at 5 minutes. We're going to start off with BetaNYC's board stat presented by Kate Nicholson, who's going to show you some 311 data. Who's going to show you some 311 data for the neighborhood. You want me to put this in here?
Yeah, sure.
Okay,
Awesome.
excellent.
Cool. So, how many of you have ever made a 311 request or complaint? How many of you have made a 311 request or complaint as a cyclist? Awesome, great. This is going to be like old news then. So BetaNYC has this awesome fellowship program with CUNY students who work with us throughout the year. 2 of them are here, 2 past ones, fellows. And one of the things we do is our goal is to sort of teach them data skills and analyst skills as, and sort of like future civil servants. Yes. So BetaNYC has this program. We work with CUNY students to teach them data and analyst skills, and then we work on specific projects. One of the projects that past fellows have worked on is called BoardStat. BoardStat is an interface for looking at 311 data specifically designed around community boards. So the fellows identified a need for looking at 311 data in a way that community boards can take action and use it as evidence to help make decisions in their neighborhoods. So we have a tool called BoardStat, and I'm going to show you some of the data that you as a cyclist can contribute to. The data is all available on the New York City Open Data Platform, and so you can do a lot of fun things with it. This is just a look at the interface, our page 1 of BoardStat. Here you can see Brooklyn Community Board 1, which is the district we're in right now, and you can see all of the 311 data points that have been reported in this community district since the beginning of the year, so January 1st to today. Now, looking a little bit closer, we're filtering now for the descriptor blocked bike lane, which is something that you can report as a cyclist. So here you can get a sense of where people have reported blocked bike lanes. And looking closer, you might see that Kent Avenue is a highly complained about avenue. I don't know why, but, and you can't really see it, probably way too tiny, but you can pull up different details about this data request. You can see the agency that is going to be taking care of it. You can see of the request and closing it out. You can see the type of complaint type. So in this case, it was an illegally parked car that was blocking a bike lane, and it was reported at 67 West Street. And this is a hot spot, so this means that there's more than just one complaint. There are 57 complaints here. And the agency that is going to be taking care of this request is the New York City Police Department. Other data points that you can contribute to as a cyclist. One is bike rack repair. So if you see a bike rack that needs repair, let the city know. How else will they know? You can also report derelict bicycles. Or if you need a free bike, go check out these spots. You can also report pedestrian broken pedestrian signals. So other things that contribute to things getting in the way of cycling paths or a cyclist path. And then another fun way to look at this data is, or thing to do with this data is, you can actually see the number of days it takes for an agency to close out a request. So it's kind of like a way to hold agencies accountable and call them out if they are really sitting on a number of issues or complaints that you filed. Pardon? Yeah? Great. Oh, they just go and, yeah. Yeah, well, keep reporting them. So just in sum, I'm going to wrap this by saying that your data, the data that you contribute to the open data portal is really important. So especially as a cyclist, it's a way to tell your community board that there's information they need to look at and that they can use to make decisions, and take it as evidence to sort of bring it to other decision makers and elected officials and sort of advocate for safer bike lanes, and whatever else we're looking to do. So get active on 311, track your community stats on BoardStat, talk to your community board, and let's hold our city accountable.
So another great tool, if you're on bike Twitter, I'm sure you've seen How's My Driving. Oh, shoot. I need to put How's My Driving NYC, right? No, it's, oh, okay. So this Twitter handle is wrong. Brian's going to say the right one and correct me, and also introduce you to the tool, How's My Driving. This is a great tool. It has a tragic story that originates from it, but otherwise it is one of the great tools that's bringing light to the data of our streets. So, Brian.
So just a quick rundown. I'm going to talk a little bit about how the tool came to be, and then how it works, how you can use it, how it affects the city in which we live, and then I guess we're not going to do questions till later. So I'm sure that many of you who are here are familiar with the crash in Park Slope in March of last year, in which two young children were killed, their mothers were injured, another person was injured. And in the aftermath of this crash, we learned that the driver had been pulled over many times, had many moving violations, and in addition to that had 8 parking and camera violations, 4 for speeding in school zones and another 4 for running red lights. And Curb did an analysis that in the same period in which this driver had received those 8 camera violations, another 19,000 vehicles in New York City had also received 8 or more camera violations. And so several of us who have some experience with programming or with analyzing data decided to just try to pore over the data and see what we could find, and in the hopes of being able to hold drivers accountable who speed, who run red lights. But first we had to measure the problem. And so 3 people, one of whom is here tonight, Liam Quigley, and then Will Farrell and Stephen Bodson, did an analysis of speed camera violations and found quite a few things. This right here is a table of people who have received at least 2 speed camera, or vehicles that have received at least 2 speed camera violations in New York City. That's 500,000 vehicles. The number who have received at least 5 is closer to 80,000. And just a reminder, if you get a ticket for speeding in a school zone, it comes with 0 points on your license. If you've been pulled over doing doing 11 miles per hour over the speed limit, which is the threshold, you received 4 points on your license. And if you got pulled over 3 times for speeding, you would have your license suspended. And although it's not over a particular time period, but over the 3.5 years that the speed camera program was in existence at the time, over 250,000 vehicles have received 3 speed camera violations in New York City alone. And so seeing this data, asked, like, what could I do? I'm a software engineer and tried to think of ways to use this data for good. And most people are not familiar with how to access this data, with how to analyze it. And so I wanted to make it easy for people to be able to get this data, particularly at the moment they want to use it. So somebody is parked in a bike lane, somebody is parked on the sidewalk, somebody's parked in a crosswalk, some driver is doing something that they're not supposed to be doing, that you could find it. And I wanted to make this accessible on Twitter because most of the advocacy in the Safe Streets world takes place on Twitter. And so I created this tool, How's My Driving New York? And it's a Twitter bot that, I spelled that wrong, looks up vehicles using their plate and state. So if you tweet at How's My Driving NY, state:plate, it will immediately respond to you with all the parking and camera violations that vehicle has received in New York that are available in the open data databases that the service uses. And if you don't have Twitter, you can go to howsmydrivingny.nyc and you can look up the same information. And so the impact, How's My Driving NY is used increasingly in news articles after a crash when the plate is present to see how many parking and camera violations that somebody has received. Councilmember Lander, the council member for Park Slope, has introduced legislation that would allow the city to confiscate or boot the vehicle of anybody who has received 5 camera violations within a 12-month rolling period. And also, there's now a sister service in Washington, D.C. to do the exact same thing. And it just really helps give us more information about the scope of the problem that we face. I just want to give you an example here. Just yesterday, there were 26 lookups that 26 vehicles were queried that would be eligible to be booted under that pending legislation. So anyway, that is my presentation.
We're going to do questions after the lightning talk. So now we're going to have Courtney Williams from Brown Bike Girl.
Thank you. So the title that I gave this was something like The Human Layer, a ode to GIS.
Hold on, I need to actually put up your slides.
Oh, that would be
Sorry,
useful.
you can keep on talking. There.
I'm brown and I'm a girl, in case you didn't notice.
Who designs really amazing activities.
Thank you. I'm Indiana, and I'm totally like, no, but I'll. All right, so boom, that's me, Courtney Williams, the Brown Bike Girl. As you see underneath it, it says Bicycle Advocacy Consulting. And I'm gonna talk at you about sensibilities first, and then I'll talk at you about what advocacy consulting is for bicycles. So, knowing that I'm addressing a room full of people who have tech skills beyond my wildest imagination when I used to be great at 10 and no longer am, what I want you all to think of as innovators is that what if thinking outside of the box meant thinking of others, right? You all can innovate all day, you can build things, you can make the world happen, but once you make these great products, once you make these great bots and apps and things like that, what if it doesn't reach everybody? Is the world really complete if what you're putting out isn't usable to everybody and it's not making a difference in every life? So think of others. What about the others do we need to be considering? Well, does what you produce or what you want to put into the world in regards to transportation and civics and the greater good actually mesh with the lifestyles of others? Okay? What are the things that are impacting other people's lives that are helping or inhibiting them from knowing about you, from participating, right? Big question with diversity and cycling is, where are all the brown people? Particularly, where are all the black people? Where are all the Latino people? Why aren't they there, right? If we still haven't solved this question and we're powering forward with like, yay, innovation, we're not getting the job done, okay? Others' ability to access your product, your service, your organization, and others' quality of life, right? We put so many things on the ground and we're like, alternative transportation will solve this problem, that problem, and that problem. If people who look like me, people who look brown, yellow, all the beiges and in between colors aren't receiving that information, their quality of life is not changing and you're not actually living up to the mission statements that we're putting out into the world. So we have to be conscientious about changing that. And I'm going to throw some definitions out here that I love and think make the hugest difference in the world. So transportation, we all know what that is. Moving people, moving things, duh. Okay, but what I love is these definitions of something called mobility justice and transportation equity that came from people for mobility justice out of LA. Mobility justice is, and yes, please do take pictures of this, the fact that individuals face different impediments to being able to move, basically acknowledging everybody is policed differently, either formally or informally, and that's making a difference of whether or not they even want to go outside. Okay, and the transportation equity is then knowing that we know that, because we all know that. We know it in some form, right? Whether or not we then make a change in how the distribution of the things that enable people to move, bikes, bike shares, scooters, all that stuff, are actually reaching everybody, and how do we make sure that it's accessible to everyone? So we all know the common transportation issues, but what I'm saying is that there's a more significant level than, oh, East New York and Brownsville doesn't have bike share and have not, right? It's more than have and have not. It's things that really literally can impact life. Technology example number one, AI cars don't see brown people. Oh, it's like the Jetsons, except the brown people die because the cars hit them. Like, that's not okay. But somebody, you can bet, somebody who owns this company is like, but we've worked so hard on this technology for the last 15 years, and we really said we were going to get it out, and our stock shareholders are going to be really pissed off if we don't make it happen. Guess what? People's fucking lives matter more, right? Isn't that what we say every day? All right, so equity and making sure that things are just is one of those things that takes a big chunk out of your time and your timeline, but you know what matters more? Who? People, okay? Second thing, this was no surprise to any black or Latin person in frickin' New York, bike share is not equitable. I went to a conference to tell people bike share should grow from the outside where people need it to the inside where it's a toy. And unless you disrupt that ideology of who needs it and how am I going to make sure it gets to people, it's going to keep being an amenity, an add-on, a toy. We can't say New York is world class when we let the worlds be divided. So yeah, we got these typical little evaluations, but oh yeah, that's where the brown people live, where there are no dots, okay? But things that actually will make a difference in people's lives are these lower level stuff. Like if I'm on the train 3 hours a day, that means I'm with my kid 3 hours less. That kid is in an environment where there's more crime and needs me around. I have to spend more of my smaller budget on these things that make all the difference. And guess what? We say that bikes can change the environment, but if I have to still take a car 3 hours and own it, then the air quality is never going to change for black and brown people. So don't you throw me off of here, Noel. 2 minutes. So, thank you, babe. So if you don't investigate, you perpetuate. I need you to embrace this. If you don't investigate the deeper reasons about why something exists the way it is, you are literally perpetuating it. Because nothing, even though this is science, tech is science, nothing is free of biases, right? Redlining is a thing. Redlining was where we draw the districts out. Federal government said, we're going to give people loans, we're going to give money, except for the areas where there's brown people because we want to purge them from New York City as though they can go somewhere because they're too poor, right? They try to do this. All these things happen. It actually solidifies what you know of every city in the United States. 240 cities get divided up, right? You inherently, as a New Yorker, know where you don't want to go, where you don't want to be after dark, where you think the drugs are, where you think the crimes are. All of this was created, right? It builds on one crisis after another, and it becomes normal. And us as young people, or slightly more experienced young at heart people, these, right? It becomes what we think is normal, but it's not normal. Concentrated poverty is not normal. The idea that certain colors of skin and certain bad habits go together is not real or normal. So when you go to your job and they're like, oh, we're just gonna skip over the brown parts, and it seems rational, it's not. It's all a lie, and you disrupt the damn system, okay? So, what is bicycle advocacy consulting? It's me in your head saying that to you, with you, and at your boss, so that you have an ally who says, yo, we need to push harder. Remember my name. I facilitate meaningful programs and systems for you. I imbue them with the knowledge that I have of knowing race relations and social history and all of this stuff very well. I enhance your efforts to outreach to people of color and get them on bikes. And I train people to think through this thing called bias and this thing called privilege as not just buzzwords, but as actions that really impact our neighbors. And I just encourage you to know that you cannot just take your maps, you can't just take your data as face value, okay? It's supposed to be impartial, it feels dispassionate, and if nobody is even talking about it in terms of race, you might be like, oh, this is not political. Anything that was conceived in a political system is imbued with somebody's political opinion, all right? And it has a purpose to either help one group or help no groups at all. All right, so it's hard to learn all of your isms. We all have them. I have them. I have ableism, ageism. I have all of those in me. I just happen to be brown and a girl and thought about this all of my life. You don't have time to catch up with me, so I consult with you to help you get over that kind of learning curve. And I'll stop it there. Thank you for your patience.
All right, what did I do with my slide deck? Hold on a second here. There we are. So next up, we've had two great presentations about reading data. Well, how do you go about generating data? So now I'm going to ask Joseph from Reported to come up and talk about that.
Hi, everyone. So as we learned at the beginning of the lightning talks, most of you have submitted requests to 311. So how do you do it? You can go on their website, which takes you through like a long multi-page form, and it's kind of difficult to fill out. You could use the official 311 app, which has greatly streamlined things, but Reported tries to go one step further. So Reported is an app for Android, iOS, and the web that optimizes the 311 submission process for cyclists and pedestrians who witness dangerous or disrespectful driving. So on the screen here, on the left, you can see a screenshot of what it looks like on iOS. So you take a picture of a car. So for example, this one's blocking the bike lane. It'll try to read the license plate for you. It'll pick the location and the time from the image metadata. So all you really have to do is select what they're doing wrong and press submit. Once you press submit, the app behind the scenes goes and fills out the official 311 form for you. So you don't have to worry about all of that, like multi-step form. It will also tweet out the violations. So in the middle here, I've got a screenshot of the Reported NYC Twitter feed. So it tweets out both the picture you submit, the location that the violation occurred at, and using Brian's How's My Driving API, it tells you a report card of that license plate. So on the bottom here, you can see this license plate has had about 10 violations associated with it. And as most of you may know, submitting a report about a TLC driver will actually go to the TLC, who can take that driver to a hearing. And this has a concrete impact on the way these drivers drive. On the screen here, you can see a screenshot of a decision that I was involved in, where the driver just didn't show up to their hearing, and they got fined $500 as a result. So this is one way to make a very concrete, immediate difference in how drivers drive and how they behave. I think that's about all I've got. I can try to go through a demo, but I honestly did not prepare it well enough in time. Thank you.
All right, so I'm gonna see how this microphone works. How does this microphone work? Jolly, does this microphone work great? Huh? Is it working for me? Is it working for you? Okay, great. So what I'm going to ask is for the lightning. Oh, wait, hold on. I have one more lightning presentation. Well, now we know this microphone works. Now I got to time myself. Okay, hold on a second. Start. How many of you know Christine Berthet? Check Peds, great organization on the west side. For years and years and years, they've been working on building this map called crashmapper.org. It actually starts off with John. There's this amazing backstory that goes back to transportation alternatives circa 2004. John Caney, who is now the executive director of reInvent Albany, was then the executive director of transportation alternatives. reInvent Albany is the reason how I got involved and how the New York City Open Data Law comes about. That's a story for another day, another meetup. You can get online and see that. But he starts sending Freedom of Information requests to ask for crash data from the state. The state data is 2-3 years old, and ultimately it's a really long lagging time on finding out where our crashes are happening and where people are dying in the streets. Subsequently, later, he ends up creating reInvent Albany, ends up finding this amazing city council member, Gail Brewer. We end up joining forces all together, and the city's open data law comes about. And after years of continued advocacy, now there is an open data feed, a tragic open data feed around crashes and fatalities in New York. So Crash Mapper is this tool. It is the current manifestation and the best manifestation to see where crashes and fatalities are happening in our streets. And I first want to say, I'm sorry if you see someone or a plot on this map that you happen to know. We know that too many fucking people have died or been injured in the streets this year, and this is a visualization of that. This data is, Crash Mappers is a tool that's maintained by CheckPeds, and this data is all on the Open Data portal, and it's tragically updated daily. The data goes back to August 2011 and is accurate to the day. So the basic interface here, I'm sorry that my projector isn't as thorough as it should be. It's 15 years old. This slide is every red dot represents a cyclist or a pedestrian fatality this year, which is 1 dot too many. On the right-hand side, you have the ability to filter through a number of different views. You can go and see the citywide, the borough, breakdown of community board by council district, NTA, which is a neighborhood tabulation district, which is census geography, NYPD precinct, assembly district, senate district. You can even look at intersections, or you can draw polygons around certain geographies and have that set up. Once you have selected that feed, you then get a permanent link URL that you can bookmark, and you can go and refresh every single day and see what that data is. You can select by date range. You only get the year and the start of the month, and then you get the year and essentially the last day of that month. You can filter by 7 different filters, which is fatalities broken up by cyclist, motorist, and pedestrian, and then injuries, cyclist, motorist, and then pedestrians, and then a weird one, which is no injury, no fatality, but there was still a crash. I guess that's the one where everybody ends up all right. And then there's a total count. So here's the map of the community board that we're in right now, CB1. And what do we see? We see that Broadway is a continued hotspot. This particular data is essentially the last 12 months. So this goes all the way back to the 1st of July of 2018. And we know that Councilmember Reynoso has called this out a number of times, but we continue to see that Broadway is a hotspot here, specifically for pedestrian injuries. If we change this to cyclist injuries, we see hotspots in Greenpoint along Manhattan Avenue. We see a hotspot developing right around the Lorimer L train stop. And then we also see a hotspot in the most screwed up, continuously screwed up intersection, which is the Flushing-Kent Avenue interchange. If we go through, we can just look at cyclist injuries on community board, and this is now going back to 2014. And what do we see? We essentially see Grand Street as a perpetual problem. We see pretty much anywhere that a cyclist ever goes in all of New York City, or in CB1, as a hotspot. Down at the bottom of the webpage, you'll be able to see the different statistics, and then also you can switch over to do comparisons, so you can do citywide comparisons as well as selecting the very specific geographies to see how these things play out. So in this particular case, we're looking at citywide statistics and Council 34 statistics both over 2 different time periods, essentially January 2018 to August 2018, and January 2019 to August 2019. Sadly, the numbers are higher in fatalities and in crashes. So, check out Crash Mapper. It's unfortunately one of the best tools that helps document crashes and fatalities in New York City. So, now I can go to my microphone and do questions from all of the lightning talk presenters. So before we do that, can we give a big round of applause as they stand up? Hello, Jolly, does this one work? Jolly, does this one work? This one's a little quiet. Hey, but we can fix this one. All right, so I'm also from the Midwest. I grew up in Dayton, Ohio, as I said, right? Do you remember Phil Donahue? Yeah, all right. Anybody else remember Phil Donahue? All right, I'll try to be as wild as Phil Donahue. All right, who's got the first question? I'm going to give this to Courtney. Who's got a question out here? Do my Phil Donahue shuffle. All right. If you want to say your name or Twitter handle, please do, but if you can, please stand up and ask the question.
Okay. My name's Cassandra. My Twitter's Escaping New York, but my travel company has nothing to do with biking. But Mr. Frazier, I don't know why you sat down. My question's for you. So what's it called? Reported?
Reported.
That's just for TLC plates?
No, that's actually for any plate.
So I could take a picture of any plate, report it, and does anything happen to them if they're not TLC cars?
Right. So the ones that are not TLC cars will still get reported to the NYPD, like if they're blocking the bike lane or whatever. As we know, the NYPD do not really enforce those, but they'll still get sent, which is good for generating the data as to like which districts are lax on illegally parked cars, and the violations will still get tweeted out. So I could actually pull up the feed. Well, I don't know if that would take too much time. But yeah, so basically any vehicle.
I didn't know that. Does anybody know if anybody in the city is using that information to change rules? No?
Looks like Jake might.
All right, he also had his hand up for a question, so.
I don't know about changing the rules, but Corey Johnson spun up a data team for the city council and analyzed some illegal parking and similar data from the 311 data. I don't know if he's done anything with it yet, but it was a step in the right direction. It was a few months ago, so I think that's still got potential. He had a hearing where he called up a bunch of agency heads, not including the NYPD, and basically demanded, had a bunch of questions about their resolution rates and times. Like he found data that looked incorrect or faked and actually grilled them on it, which was real good.
You had a question? Okay, all right. Thank you. Yeah.
I'm a regular reported user, and I can tell you that this app cuts down a process that would take minutes into just seconds. So the reports, the complaints that you can do through this app, you can also do directly through 311 on the website, but this is much easier. It duplicates it and sends it into multiple streams instead of you having to do all that work. Also, the 301 data, in addition to this reported data, which goes into 301, is all available on the New York City Open Data website. So you can go there and you'll see a record of all of the complaints that you have filed or that everyone has filed for certain locations, and it lets you filter by area or by community board or whatever you want. And that's a very powerful tool that you could then send to your elected officials or your community board or whoever you want to. So it is all available. It all does go into open data.
Sorry, what was the question?
Services on.
Oh, right.
Is that
So,
required? Can that be?
the location is required, but you can specify it manually in the apps. So it tries to automatically pull it from your photo, but if the photo doesn't have it because you've turned your location off, you can still fill it in yourself. While we're still here, I realized that I forgot a slide, so I switched the screen back to it. Basically, the point is we've had a huge growth in usage recently. Over the past month of July, we had about 3,300 or 3,500 reports. 2,500 reports submitted by about 330 different users. And this is a pretty substantial proportion of all of the reports that 311 receives.
All right, we are running really over time. So how many questions are out there? I just want to see those hands up in the air. Okay, 1, 2, 3. All right, and then anybody? Okay, you had one? Huh? No, you. All right, thank you. I'm going to take these 3 questions. If you could.
Oh, yeah, sure. Sorry, my name's Connor. I was just wondering, the applications presented, what support languages other than English, and how are you anonymizing the data to prevent any kind of possible retribution for submitting?
Oh.
I'm going to take the 3 questions and then allow for everybody to answer them, and then we're going to do the 3 questions and everybody can answer them. How about that?
There is another side effect. You were asking what can happen. If you bombard them with like 40 at a time for one location, you'll get a courtesy call at 3 or 4 a.m. from the police. That's the other side effect. Wondering, are they still there? That kind of stuff. And
Not a question, but the infamous NYPD harassment call at 3 a.m., which several of us have experienced over time. Where was the other question that was over here? All right.
Hi, my name is Darren. Thank you for bringing up the issue of transit equity. I recently spent a lot of time in Queens and obviously in Brooklyn and other boroughs, and really it's nice that City Bike is expanding, but it seems like it's too little too late for the bike infrastructure, bike education, bikes. What can we do to try to support the idea of transit equity in communities that need it?
Great. All right, so I'm going to give the microphone here for the tech question, and then how do we provide solidarity for everybody? All right.
All right, so to the question about reported, I believe the first part of the question was language support. At the moment, we only support English. Reported as a side project for about 3 people, so we haven't really been able to focus on internationalization quite yet, unfortunately. Regarding the safety of your data, so the information that gets submitted to 311 is submitted basically by a script on your behalf. It does require your name and I believe your phone number, and I'm pretty sure that's all that we send now. I think it used to require your address, but then we found out that 311 doesn't really need it. As far as retaliation goes, I believe the drivers that you complain about do not learn your information unless a hearing is called and you attend the hearing. If you attend the hearing, which you could do by phone, then you have to give your name, but I believe that's all.
As for internationalization with How's My Driving New York, if you use Twitter, all you have to do is tag the bot and then a plate, colon, and the state abbreviation. So that would be the same in any language. And any response that you get in the Twitter app, you should be able at the bottom to translate a tweet into your specific language. And then on the website, it is in English. But again, if you use a browser like Chrome or Firefox, you should be able to translate, or the browser should be able to translate that into your language. As for data, for every lookup on Twitter, the person who made it is saved, the ID of the tweet is saved, along with a lot of information about the lookups, and that's mostly just for being able to link back to somebody if somebody reports that same vehicle. If you use the internet, or if you use the website to do a lookup, no information is saved about who you are. And if you use the API, same thing, no information is saved about you.
In regards to board stat, all of our data is in English, so we're only representing English data. Courtney.
Thank you for the question on transportation equity. The answer to basically how do you stand up and be there to get equity going in the right motion, it depends on what the entity is. When it comes to these capitalist entities, they're always sensitive to marketing, right? The article that I showed about City Bike and its exposure as racially biased, all of a sudden, like a week later, they were announcing that they were going to the Bronx and it was going to make it permanent. Embarrass the shit out of for-profit companies because that's what motivates them. They're moving by money. When it comes to solidarity in general, though, equity is one of those things where you have to embody it yourself. You need to, all of you, need to act like it's you that's on the line, right? The meaning of solidarity truly is to be, I am solidly part of this other person. They aren't an other and I'm advocating for them. I'm advocating for me because what happens to them happens to me in some kind of way. So you go at it and get on Twitter and get on whatever and show up and show out, embarrass people, talk about it. Elevate the cause. When you know there's a protest for e-bikers, show up like you are an e-biker or e-biker's child or e-biker's wife or whomever, and just be there as voraciously as though it were absolutely you.
Thank you. And we will, just to be talking about the mobility justice definition that Courtney used, we're going to use that as additional framework around a hackathon that we're planning on September 21 for mobility, mobility for all abilities, which is part of National Day of Civic Hacking, It's going to be at the Brooklyn Army Terminal. We're currently looking for challenges, and we're going to be working with Courtney to develop some challenges that will be talking about mobility justice. So thank you, Lightning presenters. I would now like to go to the panel that was supposed to start 30 minutes ago because I emailed everybody, I'm going to be judicious with time. And apparently I am being really bad with time. If we could we're going to have at least Jake. Where are you? Raise your hand in the hand. All right, we've got Jake over there in the back. We got drivers of NYC. We've got Ollie and Streeter and Shmuley, who are all going to talk about their little rigs that they have been posting online in various mechanisms. So we're first going to start off with, how many of you put slides in here? We got Ollie and drivers, Susan. And all right, great. About an hour and a half ago. I hope I have the right deck then. Hold on, let me refresh. So let me make sure that I just refreshed. Great. All right. So I'm going to do a similar setup where we're going to do 5 minutes, and then we're going to have a little panel conversation. So Ollie, go first. And if you want to change seats with Ollie, there we go.
Hi, everybody. Ollie Oliver, the guy so nice they named him twice. Ollie Cycles on Twitter. One of the questions I was supposed to answer was, why do I record every ride? This happened a year and a half, 2 years ago now. After I got the crash report, I found out the police had written down the driver's version of events and pretty much ignored mine, and I do believe that affected the settlement that came out of this. Yes, that's a broken elbow. Yes, that's a partially torn ACL. Yes, I went to physical therapy. Not pretty. Just last week, I was rear-ended. No injuries, no damages to the bike, but the driver drove off. There would have been no police report without video on the spot because they looked at me and said, no damage, no injuries, no report. And I had to throw a fit and show them video on the spot, but that driver got a ticket mailed to them. So that's why I do it. My gear. When I bought the Contour Roam 3 a few years ago, it was only $120. It was not the top of the line camera by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not a camera guy, surprisingly, but 1080p resolution is the max that this camera does. No screen, approximately 4 hours of battery, which is actually pretty good. Only supports up to 32 gig SD card. A lower end or cheaper camera is fine. You're not starting a YouTube channel where you're doing like sick kick flips or whatever skateboard tricks are that the young kids are into these days. You just want video of your side of the story so that the cops can't call you a liar, because they will. The mount on my helmet is quick release with a safety tether as a backup. It's never slid out. I prefer helmet mounted because I can turn around and get a view of what's behind me if I'm only running one camera. And I used to have a handlebar mount and I forgot it on the bike a couple of times, and that could be a potentially very expensive mistake. My video editor is this retired Android phone and free software on Google Play. Like, I don't throw these out because they make good disposable phones for vacations or whatever when you upgrade, and now I can edit video anywhere. This is my entire studio right here in my hands. Record every ride. I wasn't recording every ride when I had a handlebar mount. That was a barrier for me. Getting this helmet mount got me more into the habit of recording every time. Figure out what works for you, remove barriers so that you are consistently recording every ride. Choose what you feel like posting, or if you feel like posting. I know I put up a lot of content, but it is a fraction of the nonsense that I deal with out on the street. You do not have to post everything. Do as little editing as possible. Aim for done, not perfect, because again, you're just trying to get something out there to represent your experience. I'm I'm going to skip that little pro tip on KindMaster. Stay on top of charging the camera and deleting footage, because if you forget to do that at a crucial moment, you're going to be without your camera for a commute. If you're not recording, ask yourself why and find a process that works for you to remove those barriers for yourself. That's it.
So I'm Drivers of NYC. You see my videos on Twitter. So why do I record my ride? So one is to, in the eventual event of my injury or death, my side of the story might be able to be told. Also safety is part of it. I've had some drivers who get really aggressive, but then once they notice like the flashing red light, they'll like back off. And another big one, so a lot of my videos, the ones that don't go to Twitter, I actually end up sending to the TLC via the Reported app. And it's been very beneficial just mentally, because now there is like an avenue for me to vent my frustration and actually have it be productive. So if a cab driver cuts me off, if they rear end me, if they block the bike lane, I can submit the video to the TLC. And I guess what I found is that the videos for the TLC have been well received. It's just, it doesn't turn to he said, she said. It's like, you know, you can watch what I saw. And also just like documenting kind of the street experience, the mundane and something more unusual and the bizarre. And by mundane, I mean, it's not really the right word. It's like, you know, the experience of biking. Like everything I've experienced on bike, I'm sure everyone in this room has experienced. The difference is I run a camera like 90% of the time, and I just manage to capture it and broadcast it to the world. My gear, so I have an old GoPro, up to 1080 resolution. I don't actually know what that means, but I record at 960 to give myself, I guess, a little bit more space. There's no screen, but there's a phone app, so you can like replay it. Battery life is not great. It's an hour and a half, but for me, it covers my round trip commute plus a little bit extra, so it works for me. And you can have a micro SD card. So I wear the chest mount. I mean, honestly, I bought this camera set up for running, and then later realized it also works for biking. But I mean, the nice thing about it is, you know, I don't need to wear a helmet. I don't need to worry about like pulling it off the handlebars. And if I ever step away from my bike for whatever reason, I can continue recording, which also has come in handy from time to time. Also, it's like a nice stable view. Downside is that it looks a little dorky, and you can't really capture things that are like to the side or behind you. You have to like, I mean, you can physically grab it, but it can miss something. So pros and cons. In terms of editing, sometimes I do it on my phone. I prefer to do it on my computer, but I just use kind of the default Movies app that's on Windows 10. So I just plug my camera into the computer, which also charges it. Then I just drag and drop all the files onto my computer, delete as needed. And the only editing I really do is just like trimming it down. I don't really do captions or anything like that. Just trying to keep it simple. Yeah, so like Ollie said, record every ride. Inevitably, when I don't have my camera on me, something really crazy happens. So just always wear your camera. And I guess in terms of just a few tips for TLC reports, if that's an avenue you want to explore, make sure you include a timestamp of your video, because I think that helps the TLC identify the driver. And if possible, try and include street signs to like give some indication of location, and just try and like have your photos and videos just show as much information as possible. I try to verbalize my observations. Because if you do end up going to a hearing down the road, sometimes the judge will be like, well, how do you remember this incident? It was like 6 months ago. And you know, I can say, well, in preparation for this hearing, I rewatched the video, and you know, at the time I made these observations, so that's how I remember. Yeah, that's it.
Hey guys, my name is Jake. I'm at the Jake Schmidt on Twitter, and I'm going to say the same thing everybody else has. You should be riding with a camera if you're biking, and there's two primary reasons that I do. I don't make too many reports, even though the Reported app is very nice. But the big one is safety. If something happens to you, the NYPD will find any ambiguity or gap in the hard evidence, even against eyewitness testimony, to blame it on you. We saw this 3 weeks ago. The NYPD ran down a cyclist in an SUV, and against eyewitness testimony, they released an official statement that said the cyclist jumped off the bike and wedged it under their wheel. Now, obviously, it was not this cyclist's fault that the NYPD ran him over with an SUV, but what could he have done differently? He could have been riding with a camera. He was on a city bike, so it's a little harder, but if you check my pinned tweet right now, I have a recommendation for an action camera mount that you can quickly put on and take off a city bike. Seriously recommend it. This happened yesterday even. I think Hilda Bikes on Twitter reported it. There's a video of the NYPD arguing with a pedestrian that said, no, that cyclist had the green light, and saying, yeah, but you know, these cyclists are just such a problem lately. So the more you ride with the camera, the less that will happen. The other thing is tweeting. People like seeing the first person perspective. You know, most people have never been on a bike in New York, and seeing what it's like without having to actually be in danger yourself really helps change the conversation. My city council member follows me on Twitter, knows me as the bike video guy, and is like proposes solutions to problem areas in his district. And everybody in here can do that, and a lot of us have different city council members. So you know, the more people that are doing that, the better it'll be for everyone. So my gear, first of all, I just want to put a disclaimer. My setup is ridiculous. You should not feel like you need all of this. It is grossly overkill, and if I hadn't bought these cameras sort of one at a time, I probably wouldn't have all three of them. I rarely have this full setup when I go out. The never leave home without a camera is the GoPro Fusion. The interesting thing about this is that it's a 360-degree camera. It captures everything that is not blocked by my body. This is really helpful because the most dangerous situations I encounter in any given ride are drivers coming in from the side. You can't capture that with a normal GoPro facing forward or backwards. You can sort of get it with a helmet mount, but with this, you can actually produce a video that, in retrospect, looks like you were panning to show the driver the entire time as they come up from behind you, close pass, and then end up in front of you. I found that it's really good for the most dangerous situations that I'm in. It's also good because it sort of incidentally captures stuff that happens nearby, like if I get off the bike. So this one I cannot recommend enough. It's actually cheaper than a normal GoPro. I think it's not selling well. The one drawback is the software is not great. It takes a while to do this editing, probably like 20 to 30 minutes for any given short clip that I tweet. So it's something to be aware of if that's something you want to do on a regular basis. But other than that, I really can't recommend it enough. It's super easy to grab it, put it on my handlebars, and go if I'm in a hurry. Often I will ride with only this because this is my primary safety camera. My least important camera, just a regular GoPro. I put it on the back. It gets everything that was blocked by my body from the camera in front of me. Not that important, don't feel obligated. This one that I have on is for tweets. I find personally that the chest mount is best for Twitter because it is less jerky than a head mount, but it still shows the bike in front of you, makes people feel like they're in it. I find that a handlebar mount, the camera's sort of like floating out there in the world. You don't feel as much like you're on a bike. You get much better engagement on the chest mounted ones. The problem, of course, is that it looks like this. It is not great. I've been made fun of a lot. Another thing, optional, but I do recommend it, if you get the external battery chargers and extra batteries, you don't have to worry about charging the camera. Like Ollie said, it can be tough to stay on top of charging the camera. Before I got this, I would repeatedly find my cameras dead and leave the house without them. With this, I swap the batteries, something's always charging, and I go. I've never had to leave a camera at home because it was dead. Dumb joke, bring a Bluetooth speaker. Makes you look cool.
We have, hold on. You don't have any slides, or did you have slides? Okay. All right, well then, I'm gonna do some tech support. Why don't you just do a little presentation here? We're gonna do 2 quick presentations. Apparently my screens are all yellow.
You want me to start?
Yeah.
All right, I'm Mike Streeter. I started using a camera about 4 years ago. A coworker of mine, riding to work from the Bronx, was the victim in a hit and run, not accident, crash, And I mean, she survived, but she had very severe injuries. And the police was very helpful. By very helpful, meaning they did absolutely nothing. And the day after, I was like, I need to start recording my rides. The 2 points I wanted to make, I have a Garmin Verb. It's 4 years old now. I didn't do a lot of research, but it's just a basic camera. I use a helmet mount. I don't always ride with a helmet, but I find this to be helpful because it might be a bit of a controversial statement, but I feel like drivers notice it and they treat me differently. When I started riding with this on my head, I feel like they're, people are scared of cameras, they're scared of being on YouTube. And I feel like it made just a little bit of a difference. So I feel just slightly safer having that on. The other point I wanted to make is that I strongly recommend having, if you get a camera, having, wherever you mount it, having a routine for charging it, deleting your files, and also for turning it on. There is nothing worse than riding around with your camera and something happens and you realize it, you didn't record it. It is extremely frustrating. And one little thing that happened to me just this last week, last week it was it Wednesday when the two cyclists were killed. I was almost hit by a FedEx truck. I was in the bike lane, it swerved into me, almost hit me. I cursed the hell out of him. And at the light, he parked his car and came after me. Just started coming at me. And he got right in my face. And as soon as he came right up to me, he noticed the camera, walked right away. And the sad part of that is I did not record it. I had not turned it on. So have a routine.
Cool. All right.
Hey there, I'm Shmuley, known on Twitter as Shmuley. So this is my setup. Over here, there's one thing that other guys have not mentioned before is when you are recording and you want to tag something in your recording, there's a button that on this GoPro that I have is the GoPro Hero 2018. There's a button over here that you can press and it highlights it. So you don't have to start looking for what the footage that's interesting. You can just look for that little highlight and then export just that little information. Okay, let me go back to how I started recording. I was stopped at the light on Broadway. This is about a year or so ago. And there was a driver turning onto Broadway and it was a pedestrian crossing. And the driver did not see or did not pay enough attention to that pedestrian and crashed into that pedestrian. The pedestrian fell on the floor with all her shopping bags flying all over. And I'm like, she's not stopping. So I blew the light and started chasing this woman. And she's like shaking her head, I'm not stopping, I'm not stopping. I'm like, you're not stopping, you are. So eventually she got into traffic and I stood next to her and like, you have to stop. I called 911 and eventually she stopped. The cops showed up and they're like, are you sure you got the right person that hit this woman? I'm like, yeah, I just watched it. So I'm like, okay, next time I'll have evidence. That's why I got myself a camera. And as others have mentioned before, it gives you the confidence to do things that you otherwise would not. It gives you the confidence to confront a driver, say, you're in the bike lane. And they're like, yeah, I don't care. Like, you better care. Because you're going to be all over the YouTube, Twitter, whichever it is. And you're going to care because there's going to be a lot of people seeing this. And once they realize that, they sometimes back down or they double down, but you have the evidence and they're going to be the ones looking like fools. Another thing that I've recently started doing is placing cones on the bike line. Because we all know paint doesn't protect us. So again, when you have the camera on you, you feel like you're not invincible, but you can do more because it's all recorded, and whoever does confront you, they'll think twice about doing so. So far, no one has ever come over to me and said, why are you placing a cone there? I just put the cone in place, or a barrel, whichever I can find closest, and put it as a kind of divider. Next day, it'll probably be gone again. I'll put it there again. And whenever you see a cone that can be placed to make people safe, just put it in the right place. Thank you.
Can I get all the camera people, cyclists with cameras to come up here? I'm going to do the Phil Donahue thing for 8 minutes, running around. I'm going to collect first 3 questions, allow the panelists to do some answers, and then go around for more questions. All right, so you don't have to stand in front of the projector, but come over here so that way, this little box is like the video box. So one of you take that one. The other one takes this one. All right, be nice to each other. And let me start the timer. All right, who's got questions?
Hi. Have you ever had someone who you weren't like going after, but just a pedestrian or someone on the street who was uncomfortable by you having a camera? And how do you deal with that if it ever happens? Thank you.
Wait. I'm going to do 3 questions and then.
Oh.
If you have a 360 camera, why wouldn't you just wear that on your head and not have it obscured by your body? What's the trade-off? And how do you all deal with aiming your camera all the time? Do you have to readjust it every time? You have all that. All right. So many men asking questions. All right. Where is the next question? All right.
So just to be clear, so do you all like upload videos every night when you get home? Is it just when an incident happens? Like what's the ratio? What would you like to be doing? What do you tend to do? Yada yada.
All right.
I don't think any of us have had a problem with a pedestrian being uncomfortable with being recorded. Certainly I haven't.
I've definitely had drivers tell me it's illegal for me to take a picture of their car, and I tell them that's bullshit because we're in the public street. If you don't want it on page 6, don't do it in the street.
I once had a driver tell me it was illegal to take a photo of him inside the car, but I'm like, well, I'm taking a picture of your car, which is on the street, and you just happen to be in it, and your window's rolled down, and you're yelling at me, and you have a pig on your lap, so, like, you know.
Oddly specific.
The question about the 360 camera.
Yeah, so I think 360 degree with a head mount would probably make a lot of sense. I don't because I don't wear a helmet, so there would be no consistent place to put it. But the camera is actually very nice. It'll stabilize as you turn the camera, so you don't have to worry about the footage turning. So I suspect that would work fairly well, yeah.
Also, if you wear your camera on your helmet, you look like a huge dork. There's no getting around it. I look like Big Bird. And
All right, 3 more questions.
Oh, somebody asked about how much I post.
Yeah.
I think of it as an interview show. I feel like there's a lot of close passes. I generally only post the ones where I then catch up to the driver and then they make an ass of themselves on tape explaining how they don't understand what the law actually is. And so I look for good interview show videos to post because I think that's more interesting. I probably post, 2 out of 10 incidents where I'm getting buzzed while I'm riding around.
Yeah, I would love to only post things that are good about cycling. Like I saw a little fluffy dog in a backpack, so I posted that. So I would love to only post those things, but unfortunately we also have to show what our streets are really like. So whatever happens throughout the day, and also the good things, please share those as well, because it's good for everyone to see what's great about cycling.
Yeah, I guess similarly, most of the stuff that I see, I don't end up posting. It's if something's particularly egregious, or if it's like topical. So if like some politician just made some quote about how we're all equally responsible for safety, then I find some video that directly contradicts that, then I'll post that and like quote the politician to try and point out the absurdity of it. So yeah, if I think of something witty to post with it, then I'll post it. But most of it ends up not making it, just because I don't know. I feel like people get tired of seeing bike lane violation after bike lane violation or right hook, and yeah.
Wait, hold on. It's for the internet. Wait, no, but it's the microphone.
True. Okay. So I'm a weirdo who doesn't have Twitter, but I would like to really document what I see while I'm biking. Do you have any suggestions for someone who wants to film but is scared of the internet? Oh.
Do you do Instagram? Okay, yeah. I mean, social networks are the primary reason I post. I think that actually bike advocacy is way underrepresented on Instagram. Somebody started up an account just to document bike lane violations, got like 3,000 followers in a month. So I think there's a thirst there. I think there's a lack on that platform. If not, I mean, I think those are the two major social networks that are like public facing. So I'm not sure. You could maybe post stuff on YouTube and get a following that way. But I don't know if it would get the same reach.
Great. All right, 3 more questions.
Just a thought, you can post videos to the Reported app, and that puts it on Twitter without, you being on Twitter if you don't want to do that.
Great. Questions?
What do you all think about advertising even bigger that you're recording people, like a shirt or a sign on your bike?
I've thought about that, but yeah.
I mean, pointing out to drivers that I have a camera has, like other people have mentioned it, I've gotten more space. Like someone was following me really closely, I pointed at the camera and then yelled out their license plate number, and suddenly they were 3 car lengths behind me. So, not a bad idea.
All right, any other questions? Well, you will always, if you're on the Twitter, you will always have their Twitter handles to ask them questions. All right, great. Well, thanks for helping demystify cycling with cameras. Thanks. All right. And now for our exciting conclusion, brought to you by Vaccaro and White. But I also have to thank Vaccaro and White for sponsoring the War on Cars podcast. You've been a dedicated sponsor of that podcast, and that is a very entertaining podcast. So now I give it up to Steve Vaccaro, Bicycles Only.
Okay.
Wait,
How do we get that up?
Oh, cool. What is that? Hold on. Da, da, da. And Kate, yes, I have an iPhone charger for you, now that I see your text message. All right.
Hey, thanks a lot, Noel, and great to see everyone here tonight. I am not a tech guy, as you will learn, become painfully obvious, but I decided to use a tech-themed idea for the very brief talk I'm going to give, biking your urban transportation hack. And, what do I mean by that? Well, you are hacking your way past the costs and the burdens of other modes of transportation. Obviously, a car, the purchase price, the insurance, the gas, the repairs, the tickets, the parking, the congestion, the sitting in traffic. It's really not that much better on mass transit. It's better, it's certainly less expensive, but you can just get stuck. And when you're stuck in mass transit, you are really stuck, and your fate is in the hands of Who knows? But on a bike, you don't really have to wait for anyone unless they're right in front of you and things are really tight. Most of the time, you're really just independent. It is so much better. And of course, there's the costs, the direct costs of these other modes of transportation. There's also the indirect costs and the burdens that go along with it. But I'm going to abbreviate what I was going to say there in the interest of time. But you're pursuing this urban transportation hack of cycling, and there's two ways you can be made to pay. It's not completely free. And what are they? Traffic regulations. You're subject to ticketing now. Increasingly, you'll get caught by the police doing something. You're going to have to pay a fine. When I first started bicycling in New York City in the 70s, it was like you were invisible. You know, you'd never get stopped for anything, at least as a white person. I know that wasn't true for everyone, but now we have these ticket traps, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that later. And then, of course, there's crashes and injuries. That's another way to pay when you're on a bike, because you're not armored, okay? So it's much more easily, you're much more easily hurt. And so that's going to be the focus of the discussion, is how to minimize these two kinds of costs to your ideal way of getting around New York, your urban transportation hack. And of course, I have to put in as a footnote, it's not just a hack. Intrinsically, it's so much better than these other ways of getting around. Your physical health, your mental health, the recreation, the fun, the environmental responsibility and sensitivity of this mode compared to other modes, the civic engagement from being able to just meet your friends on the road, meet new people you happen to be riding next to, that just doesn't happen in cars in the city. So it's much more than a hack. I do also just want to say a little bit about our firm, the Law Office of Akara and White. We are a community-based law firm. We represent the cycling community here in New York. We've done so between me and my partner. He goes back over 20 years. We represent cyclists, and we provide advice and counseling for all manner of issues that come up for cyclists, which is not just if you've been hit in a crash, which is how we pay our bills, but we talk to people about problems with the police. We've done some very significant police misconduct litigation. We do impact litigation with organizations like Transportation Alternatives, with bike clubs. We've done a lot of different types of work with legislators, helping draft legislation to try to improve things here in the streets in the city, with Corey Johnson, with Brad Lander, with Carlos Menchaca, with a number of other people in the city council and others in the state legislature. So, you know, our goal is to serve this community of cyclists, and if there's one thing I could just get across to people, you should never hesitate, if you have a question, it's a legal question, to pick up the phone and contact us. We're very easily found, and we dispense loads and loads of free legal advice every year, seemingly every day, and it's worth every penny we charge. So I'm not going to get into the bike traffic law because it's actually it's way too complicated. But here's an approach to what is the applicable rules for cyclists. You have the same rights and responsibilities as the operators of vehicles. Everyone has heard that. But there's three important classes of exceptions. If a rule is explicitly applicable to motor vehicle operators, it doesn't apply to you. So, operating while intoxicated doesn't apply to operators of bicycles. Operating a cell phone doesn't apply to operators of bicycles. If it applies explicitly to cyclists, ride in the bike lane when it's safe and usable, well, that also is a rule that applies to you that doesn't apply to motorists. That's a whole second class of exceptions. There's an irritating section in the law called bicycles and play devices, and that's where all the bicycling laws are kept, in the play device section. We know they're not toys. And then rules that by their nature do not apply to cyclists is a very interesting little provision in the law that has been used creatively in some ways. Just a quick example, signaling. A driver has to signal for at least 100 feet prior to making the turn. We know they all do that all the time, right? Especially here in New York. But courts have looked at it and said it's unreasonable to expect a cyclist to do the same thing. That's a rule that applies to all operators of vehicles. Ordinarily, it would apply to bicyclists, but the argument was made and accepted by judges that it's unsafe for cyclists to have to signal for 100 feet prior to the turn. So of course, once that case was decided, you don't have to signal for 100 feet, the next case coming along, cyclists didn't signal at all, which certainly happens. And then the court said, well, that's not right either. Cyclists do have to signal. So it's up in the air for how long you have to signal and when and where. Where do you find the bike laws? There's 5 different places. It's very, very difficult sometimes, even for lawyers, to figure out what the applicable rule of law is. I actually created a decision tree that you have to go through to figure out what the proper source of the law is, because the city can supersede the state rules, and has done so in some very important ways. The city, New York City alone, among all cities in the state, has the ability to write its own rules about the right-of-way. And it's from this that we got what we call the right-of-way law. It's a criminal penalty for drivers who violate the right-of-way and injure a pedestrian or cyclist. There have been a lot of problems in its implementation. It's been incredibly controversial, but that shows that it's going right to the heart of the problem. The drivers want to be able to violate the right-of-way of anyone who gets in their way. You know, are we going to have rules about right-of-way or not? Is the law going to protect people who don't have armored protection? That's what that law is about, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done to make it functional, but I'm very proud to have been involved in its drafting, enactment, enforcement, and hopefully its reform. And it's only because of this crazy decision tree that we were able to get that done here in New York City. That's better. I'm going to focus a little bit on red light tickets because it's the most common ticket that cyclists get. We get all these calls. We had a class action against the Department of Motor Vehicles because tickets were being misclassified for cyclists as driver's tickets. If you're a driver, you pay not only the fine, which is steep, $190, you pay an $88 surcharge, you get points on your license. They were doing it to cyclists systematically. We got them to change that practice. They got them to redesign the ticket so there wouldn't be an ambiguity, and cyclists don't have to pay those surcharges or get those points. Seriatim ticketing is when the cop follows the cyclist through 3 or 4 red lights in a row. There's a recidivism provision. The first ticket is $190, the third is $400 and change. I'm sorry, the second is $400 and change, the third and each additional $900 and change can get very expensive. When do police follow a driver for 4 consecutive blocks to see what violations they commit and then add them all up together and hand out 4 tickets? Never is the answer, but they do it to cyclists. They think it's funny. And there are things that you can do. You end up in this situation to beat that at the DMV. But the most important thing to do is to look behind you, because the police technically are supposed to be behind you, seeing you go through the red light before they write a red light ticket. They're not supposed to be on the far side of the intersection because they can't see the light you're going through if they're over there or off to the side. So the police have to be behind you. A lot of people, they look to see, are there police around? If they're going to go through, look behind you, okay? That's the place to look. Look for the cars with the super gangster tint windows. Those are the cops there following you through 3 consecutive red lights. Best of all is to stop. Your feet will not fall off if you touch the ground while you're cycling, I promise. And, you know, for a lot of different reasons. There are fitness reasons, you know, stopping and starting, you know, you get more of a workout. If you're in a hurry, you can jump off the bike, you can run through with the bike and then jump back on. You get your running dismount and mount down. It looks very cool, it's very impressive. Urban cyclocross, I like to call it. And again, you know, you're almost as fast as if you were riding through slowly, looking around, looking behind you. It's a little bit safer. If the cops see you running through, they laugh. They are not going to ticket you, number one, because you're doing it as a pedestrian, but number two, because really you're showing them respect. And really that's, I think, what for a lot of cops, what they really care about is getting the respect from the people. It's not so much that they care about whether you're following the law or not. Of course, they're paid to write tickets, so you know they're going to ticket you, but for a lot of them, they get a kick out of it. I've never heard of anyone getting a ticket, dismounting and walking or running through. And of course, another reason to stop is that it is one of the things that makes such a huge, you know, obstacle for cycling advocacy when everyone is going through red lights. I mean, I do it all the time. You know, I've never gotten a red light ticket in my whole life riding a bike in New York City, but, you know, there are reasons, thank you. There's reasons to stop. Dealing with cops at a traffic stop, I mean, it's about the respect, the point that I was making before. Don't tell them they should be ticketing someone else. It's just not going to work. Am I done?
No, you can
okay. If you get a red light ticket, think about it philosophically, amortize it across all the times you've gone through the red lights. You'll realize it's just a nickel each time, and maybe you should just pay the ticket. Do what cab drivers do, adjourn the ticket multiple times, and you'll actually come to a hearing years later when the cop is no longer on the force, so, you know, they won't show up, and, you know, and then if you really are at your day of reckoning and you're about to go in on the ticket, then you should give us a call. We give tons of free advice to people on the eve of these hearings. Carlos Menchaca, the city council member, supported, drafted, pushed through this leading bike interval legislation. I don't know if people know, but I'm sure people have recognized that at more and more intersections, there is an advanced white walk signal for pedestrians that comes before traffic moving in the same direction as the pedestrians get the green signal to go. This is a head start for pedestrians. The bill extends it to be a head start for cyclists who can go on that white signal. And I really think it could be a game changer, because now when a cop is going to testify at the DMV in behalf of a ticket, the cop has to say not only what the traffic signal was doing, but what the pedestrian crossing signal was doing. And I don't think they're up to it. I really don't. I think it's going to take years before the police who come and do these ticket hearings are actually in a position to be able to give the testimony necessary to nail someone on a red light conviction and rule out that they weren't actually going through on one of these leading intervals. So it could really be a game changer. You can't hack your way out of being injured. You have a claim for medical expenses. If there's one really important message to get through, it's that too many people are afraid of medical debt and they walk away from a crash. They will not accept medical attention from EMS or go to the hospital because they're afraid of the cost. But there is always no-fault coverage. $50,000 worth of medical coverage for the ambulance bill, for the ER, and whatever else you need. Also lost earnings. You lose your right to this if you don't stay at the scene and wait for the cops. The same cops who have contempt for us and victimize us all too often, they are the necessary ingredient at any crash if you're going to use these no-fault benefits. You've got to call the police and stay at the scene in order to get that, and you have a 30-day deadline to get in your no-fault claim. You can obviously bring an action for damages, for personal injury or property damage. You got 3 years for that, plenty of time. And then it's important to remember, even if it's an uninsured driver or a hit and run crash, you can get this coverage, these benefits. And there's a fund set up to provide them to you, but not if you don't report it to the police within 24 hours. It's a very strict deadline. The assumption behind it is that everyone's a fraudster and they're going to fake a crash in order to be able to cash in. I've never seen anyone do that. No one has ever come to us trying to fake a crash. But, you know, so many people have come to us with devastating injuries they didn't recognize because they were in shock and endorphins and adrenaline and everything else that happens when you're in a crash. And then they waited the day and it was just too late. They were SOL. So don't be one of those people. And if you are a person who comes upon a crash victim in the street, be the calm voice that tells them the right thing to do. Stay at the scene. You've got to let the police come and memorialize that the crash happened, because, you know, if the report doesn't happen at the scene, then the crash didn't happen at all. That's what you're going to hear. But at the same time, you cannot rely on the police. They will come and they will not take the names of witnesses. They will not even take the names of all the license plates of the vehicles that were involved in the crash. It is so common for them to leave the information out. You've got to collect as much information as you can. And you can do that, again, for people when you come upon a crash scene, because you haven't been through that trauma. You're in a much better position. Collect that information and help the crash victims who you come upon. There are other ways to get hurt for sure while biking. I've seen them all. We've seen them all in our practice. Intentional strikes, all I can say is flipping the bird, that's it. That like sets drivers off, and I've had so many intentional strike cases that started that way. So think twice before expressing yourself that way. And then, of course, there's roadway hazards, which are a whole other set of issues that are raised, but there's a lot that can be done there. And I'm working on a project right now with Bike New York that we think is going to enable people to use new technologies, including 3D imaging technologies, to capture information easily, similar to the manner in which reported functions, and to get it to the people who are responsible for keeping the roads in reasonable condition. So look for that. Of course, then there's cameras. I see tons and tons of videos of crashes, and I'm glad that people are using cameras. My mother gave me one. I don't wear it, but maybe I should. I'm inspired by hearing this group. I brought along some videos to show you.
So we need to go over here and lock the screen, VLC. This one is, where's the other one? Window. Where did the other one go? Yeah, cool. Hold on. You guys are all going to see what's in my downloads folder now. This one, right?
Yeah. So here's a guy wearing a GoPro on his helmet. Here he is at Park Avenue and 124th Street. The space available to pass the cars is getting narrower and narrower. Yeah, he was actually very badly injured in that collision, and one of the reasons why I picked this one is because I wanted to stop. Escape?
Yeah, what do you want?
Yeah, just go off it. I mean, as you can see, the space that he ended up trying to go through was approximately 2 feet wide. Again, we've all done it. Do it slowly. You know, the footage that you capture can demonstrate your own poor decisions as well as it can demonstrate the poor decisions of the motorists around you, I guess is the point of that one. Here's, go ahead. There's another one, but I'm going to, in the interest of time, how do I move it up to here? Okay. This is just on the, this is on the Greenway. You'll see a cab coming in this way. Boom. You know, that cab driver said that the cyclist hit him, which is what they always say, that the cyclist hit them, not they hit the cyclist. They always say that the cyclist was going so fast, you know, but of course they didn't see them until they hit them. And then, you know, when you have video like this, they have to recant. And I actually got this driver to recant. He said, no, I hit her. Yes, the point of contact was my front bumper. Yes, that's what happened. And for me, obviously, professionally, that's very satisfying. I did want to point out with this last video, before you start playing it, just this one, yeah, is a dash camera video showing a driver running over and killing 3-year-old Allison Liao, which was really a watershed event for the Safe Streets movement. It happened in 2013. There were so many things horrible about this case, but one of them was that witnesses at the scene, for no good reason that I could think of, made up stories for the press that 3-year-old Ali Liao was not being supervised by her grandmother, was running through the street loose with like a chicken in the road and got run over by this driver, and the grandmother was busy eating a watermelon and wasn't paying attention to Ali Liao. That was published in the papers, and long after we got this video and were able to show what really happened in this case, the newspaper articles were still up there blaming the grandmother for the death of her daughter. When we were able to get this video, this is what got us the right-of-way law, because so many people have in their mind an idea of how traffic crashes occur. They blame the victim, but video like this that are being captured by the great panel that we had before really shows people that it's just not so. It's just not so at all. So many crashes are like this one, which is disturbing, but it's what's going on out there, so you should watch if you can bear it. There they are. And there's that watermelon lying in the ground that some witnesses came up and said, oh, the grandmother was eating the watermelon and not minding her child when the car hit her. There's just a tiny bit more in my presentation. I'll be done.
Wrong finger. Oh, sorry.
Okay. The last thing that I wanted to say, it was really just one line of that last slide, which is that, go beyond the hack and get some insurance. We're always dealing with these idiots at the community boards saying, bicyclists should have a license and have insurance just like drivers if you want to use the roads. That's bullshit, because you cannot compare the risks and burdens and dangers imposed by motor vehicle traffic in a dense urban environment to those posed by a cyclist. It's just, they're completely different orders of magnitude. So why would you impose a scheme that was created for the technology next to guns that killed more people in human history that we know of, and then just apply it to bikes, because bikes are also, ways to get around? No. At the same time, you can buy insurance that will protect you against negligent drivers, and it's something to consider. If you have your own policy, I have a non-owner auto policy. It's maybe because I'm older, but it's quite cheap for me and my family. It provides insurance coverage if any of us are injured outside of a car, on a bike or as pedestrians. I pay about $600 a year. Everyone in my family has $500,000 of coverage against the danger that a driver will maim or kill one of us. And minimum insurance in New York is $25,000. You can lose an arm and the driver is $25,000. That's it. I mean, it's ridiculous. So you can buy insurance for yourself that will cover you in that situation against the underinsured driver who does harm to you. A homeowner's or a tenant's policy also typically includes a type of coverage that will protect you against a claim against you for harming someone on your bike. It happens. Even if you're a careful cyclist, a kid can run out in front of you. You can have a collision with another cyclist in a crowded rush hour environment in one of these cattle chutes that they call a bike facility. And, to know that there's a lawyer from the insurance company who's going to step up and protect you and defend you and you won't have to deal with it, the true misery, or one of the most miserable things I have to confront as people who've ended up causing some harm on their bike and have no insurance coverage, and people are going after them with a vengeance sometimes because they hate cyclists so much, So that's a way to protect yourself, but it means spending some money and going beyond the hack. That's it for me.
Great. So, as you can see, we are actually at the time that we're supposed to end, but the parents have left the building and it's time for us to run amok. We can actually stay a little bit later, but I do know that we advertised a 9:15 end time, so those of you who have to get to boroughs that are, or further flung parts of every borough, please feel free to exit quietly. Please make sure that your trash is in the trash can, but please exit quietly. Steve is going to be up here to continue to answer questions on the microphone. I'm going to hustle around and do the microphone hustle in case anybody wants to ask. So are there people who are sticking around who want to ask questions? I know that there was one question about what is the legality of recording a police officer and police officer interventions. Anybody else have questions that they want to ask a lawyer publicly on the internet? Actually, let's do this. Let's get those for Kate. Can I have you help answer or ask these questions? You take that side. We're going to do all four of these real quickly. All right, so we had one hand here. You're going to go first, and then we'll go over here.
You talked a little bit about working with politicians. What's been the most effective way to encourage politicians to take up safe streets advocacy?
I was just wondering if there's a specific company that you recommend for the cycling insurance.
Let's do those two, and then we'll go to the next
Okay,
two.
and there was a third question about engaging with the police.
Yeah.
Okay, engaging with the police, you're allowed to videotape them as long as you're not interfering with their work. I think what that means is don't get in their face and don't be standing so close to them that they can't go where they need to go. That doesn't mean the police aren't going to, react in an aggressive and potentially even violent manner if you try to videotape them, but you do have the right to videotape them and what they're doing in public. With respect to encouraging politicians to do the right thing by our community, one of the sort of projects that I founded was called Streets PAC. It's still alive and present. Noel was one of our board members for quite a long period of time. We are a political action committee registered to raise money and give it to politicians along with volunteer help who are supporting the cause of cycling here in New York City. And we've had some wonderful successes. You get so much more access if you hang up a shingle and call yourself a PAC than you do as a nonprofit, which can't technically endorse candidates. So, we have a small budget each year, under $100,000, but it goes a long way. And one of the best parts of our Streets PAC process is if a candidate wants our endorsement, they have to come in and spend 45 minutes with us in an interview, and we basically are woodshedding them on our issues and our perspectives and experiences, and I feel great about it, and it's an excellent complement to the core work for our community, which is being done by nonprofits like Transportation Alternatives and Bike New York and others that can't actually pick candidates. The third question was what insurance company? All I can say is don't shop by price. Geico, the Geico lawyers who were appointed to the driver who killed Ali Liao apparently advised him to testify that, yeah, that little girl was running around loose in the street when I ran her over. And that was his testimony. And then we went to try to show him the video, and the lawyer's like, oh no, you can't show him the video, it's traumatic to him. At the end of the day, we made an agreement where his license was voluntarily relinquished, and he wouldn't drive for 5 years on a penalty of $100,000. We basically made him pay over all of his net worth to the family, just as a way of getting some kind of justice. But it was a letter of apology. There were a bunch of features to that settlement, and the reason he got backed in the corner and pretty much had to agree to everything that the family demanded was because of the advice from Geico telling him to maintain his innocence when this video was out there. It was absolutely preposterous. I use a company called Amica. It's a mutual insurance company. It's the only one in the New York market that writes auto policies, and I think they're pretty good. It costs a little bit more, but you don't want to shop insurance on price.
Okay. Let's do one here and the one over there. So Kate.
Hi, if you're unfortunately involved in an accident, possibly unconscious, what happens to your stuff, your camera, your bicycle? Is anyone able to seize it, and are you able to get that back at some point?
There's no real official protocol for dealing with this, and I know Ed Raven has actually looked at this quite a bit. He's here. Oftentimes you'll just be advised by the police to lock it at the scene so that it can be retrieved later. Sometimes the EMTs will allow you to take it in the ambulance to the hospital. Virtually never will the police take it unless it's a fatal crash. The police aren't really going to help you out there, and if they do take it, they could end up losing it, as they did with Matthew Lefebvre's bicycle. They stored it in their storage facility not far from here, and during Hurricane Sandy, when the floodwaters came in, all of the evidence, not only in fatal crash cases, was contaminated and therefore lost for purposes of litigation, but also hundreds of forensic samples from rape cases, from murder cases. So you don't want the police taking anything of yours if you can help it.
So that being said, it is their responsibility to protect your property. Officially, what's supposed to happen is the police are, if you're in a crash and you're unable to take care of your bike, the police are supposed to vouchsafe it for you. Many cops will not do that unless they're forced to do so. If you encounter a cyclist in a crash situation and you see this happening, please feel free to remind the cop of their responsibility. If they leave the scene without taking the bike, call 911, call them right back. Basically, if the cop is having trouble, you're having trouble communicating with the cop, you can say, what would you do if it was a car? They usually then remember that they have what they would do if it was a car, because they wouldn't leave a car on the street.
I guess what I would just say to that is with all the stuff that's going on in the midst of a crash and what you need from the officer, which is to write a report that's not biased against you as the cyclist, that you're going to have to weigh and pick your battles that you're going to have with that officer about what they're going to do and how they're going to handle the situation.
Right, but you should understand their responsibility. One last thing is that do not choose between your health and your bicycle. Friends of mine have done this. They have taken their bike home because the cops wouldn't take it, and they didn't go to the ER until the next day to discover they had a fractured arm.
Okay. We have many hands that are going up, and time is clicking. So I'm going to do 2 questions here, and then we're going to flip over there. So back-to-back questions.
Okay, so a question about politicians and the police. Basically, there's a lot of DA elections coming up, it seems like, or probably will be one in Manhattan soon. And I know, like, kind of conventionally, the police are pretty bad about, like, investigating and referring cases for charges. Would it be possible, like, is that just a matter of, like, how it's done, or is that a matter of law? Like, if you had an amenable DA, you have them charge cases based on video evidence rather than just on if the police refer things?
Next question.
Regarding the claim deadlines for no fault, I see the 30-day deadline for filing. Is there an actual or maybe a practical deadline for seeking medical attention after your incident? So you felt fine as you left, you said adrenaline and all that, and 2 weeks later, then you start feeling stuff. Is that too late to practically get medical attention, get a bill, and then file a claim? Is that too late?
Okay, on the first question, this is just my personal view, but I think a lot of people share it. I'm not interested in really heavy criminal penalties for drivers. I don't think that's the way to go. I think there's a lot of abuses in the criminal justice system. I'm not a criminal lawyer, but the right-of-way law, which I work very hard on and I champion, is the lowest level of crime. It's an unclassified misdemeanor. In theory, you can get 30 days in jail. I don't think anyone has ever been jailed under it. And typically, people just plead down to what amounts to a traffic violation. But you go through a process that makes you feel like you committed a crime. You're there online at the summons court with the public urinators and the other people who did unclassified misdemeanors, and you can't just pay over the internet the way you can with a traffic ticket, and you possibly could be convicted of a crime. So the DAs only really prosecute the hardcore crimes. Like vehicularly speaking, they only do fatality cases practically. It is very hard getting DAs to look at hit and run cases. Hit and run cases are not referred to the DAs except in fatalities, and it's a huge, huge problem. But on the whole, I'm not really in favor of trying to get law enforcement like DAs and cops and judges more involved in this cycling world of ours. I'd kind of rather get them more out of it. I think that taking away licenses from drivers for long periods of time or for their lives and creating other kinds of penalties other than incarceration is enough to be able to meaningfully deter motorists from being negligent and reckless. As far as like a gap in treatment, as we call it in the trade, the bigger the gap in treatment, the bigger the argument on the other side, and the more persuasive that you weren't really injured, and 6 weeks after your crash, you were putting in a light bulb and fell off the ladder, and whiplash, That's what they say. It makes it hard, but I have in fact litigated successfully cases that have had gaps of treatment that are probably as much as maybe 4 to 6 weeks after a crash before someone goes and gets the treatment. In fact, I just did one that was 5 weeks, and well, you have to file an application within 30 days. So if you're not concerned about the civil lawsuit, as long as you can show causation and you have a doctor who says these injuries are because of that crash, which isn't always easy to get a doctor to say. If the doctor will say it, you pretty much have the coverage.
All right, we're going to go on that side of the room. Any questions? We got one here.
Maybe this is a little bit of a selfish question, but hopefully it'll be helpful to others. I was in a crash end of last year. I was basically trying to avoid a cement truck, and I came onto a uneven utility cover, and that's about all I remember from the rest of it. I'm pretty sure I just lost my handlebars, but I was in the hospital for a couple days, and the first thing I remember was being on the ground and people saying, "Stay down, ambulance is on the way." I was still pretty woozy, but basically I got scooped up into the ambulance. I'm not even sure if the cops showed up. I don't think they did. And basically I was like at the hospital. I'm not really sure if there was anything that I should have really done otherwise. And I'm obviously seeing luckily I had good health insurance, so I don't have to worry about it too much. But I was just kind of always still wondering if there was something that like should have taken place that I should have done to like make sure that I would have been covered. I know there was never anything for like a, police report or anything. But again, it was just more kind of like avoiding a car. I'm not sure if there was actually a collision, but I definitely ate it. But anyway, I don't know if you have any insights on that.
Yeah, should I, since I didn't see another question, I'll just say, I was involved, probably the worst, it wasn't a collision, the worst crash I was ever involved in happened the intersection of Norman and Leonard back in 2012. And I was going through the intersection, and there was a van coming in the opposite direction on Norman that was just looked like it was stopped, looked like it was waiting for me to go through the intersection, yielding to me the way it's supposed to. I committed to going through the intersection, and then it just lurches forward and starts to turn left across my path. And doing the work that I do, I knew my choice was between eating this guy's windshield or trying to avoid it. And, I braked, I went over the handlebars, I landed on the ground, and he stopped. I think he saw me in the air landing in front of his car, and I was on the ground, and there's like this grill in my face practically, but it didn't hit me, so there was no contact. And the police officer from the precinct in Greenpoint came by, and he said, I only write accident reports. I don't write accident avoided reports. You didn't have an accident. And I was, so upset, and I went through a whole back and forth. This is right around Hurricane Sandy, so there was no good public transportation. And I'm like, I have a torn up knee and a fractured wrist and all this stuff, and I'm like running around on a cane, limping quickly on a cane to go to the precinct house over and over to get the cop to write me a report. He won't write it. I'm writing letters. I'm going to sue the NYPD, right? I could sue anyone. I'm a lawyer. Finally, I get my accident report, and I wish I had brought a copy of it, because in it, it says that I, quote unquote, hurt myself for no reason because I was afraid that the vehicle was going to hit me, but it didn't move. So, okay, I do this for a living, and I was running back and forth during Hurricane Sandy to Greenpoint to get a cop to write down my words that the accident was all my fault, and the van never moved. That makes sense, but that's the report that he wrote. So, vehicles often cause harm without making contact with people was the point that I make to why I bring up that long story in response to what you said. The only way to be able to capture that, I just had a case by Woodhull Hospital today where, there were two vehicles. One pulled out, it was like a Madison-Leiden scenario. One pulled out right in front of Woodhull Hospital on Broadway. The cyclist veers to the left to get away from it, and another motorist who's trying to zoom through on the other side clips her and sends her down. Multiple fractures to her pelvis and some bad injuries, and the police did not get the name of the driver who was pulling out. And the one who clipped her from behind has the better argument that they weren't really that responsible, but they were the ones that license plate was gotten. They have the minimum insurance, $25,000. So it's really only with cameras, and I hate to say this because I don't like to tell people that there's this barrier to cycling, that you have to wear a camera all the time. And I get that it's fun, and I'm really thinking about starting to do it, but I wish it didn't have to be so. I don't see how you're going to be able to collect that information and use it and visit responsibility on the drivers who, without contact, cause so much harm without cameras or like an amazing, solid network of cyclists who are looking out for each other and sharing that information.
Yeah. I've got one. I've got
yes.
one. In Holland, they have a law which says if you're going to open the door on your car, you've got to use your right hand to open the door, which makes you look over your shoulder. Should we have something like that here?
Yeah, the so-called Dutch reach has been spoken about recently in the wake of the deaths on 3rd Avenue, the death of Aaron Padwy, which his family, clients of ours, decided to release the video that some of you may have seen recently. Dooring is the most common way that cyclists get injured in New York City. You should never ride in the door zone any faster than 7 or 8 miles an hour, in my opinion. Well, sometimes it's a trade-off because that's the way to filter up to the front during a red light so that you can get a head start on the vehicles. A law that says you have to use the Dutch reach to open your car door, you know, the problem is that the laws just aren't being enforced here, and the traffic laws just are treated, they're almost like a joke. And you know, the people who set the tone are the police. If the police took these laws seriously and weren't showing their contempt for the law by parking in the bike lanes, by refusing to render aid to poor victimized cyclists lying in the road, obviously injured, and then blaming them for their own crashes. I mean, if it wasn't so obvious that the police think cyclists are, you know, don't belong in the street and get what they deserve, I think it would flow through, you know, and this is, but we don't have that. I mean, it's the idea behind the right-of-way law. The right-of-way law right now has been nullified by the police, who treat it like a joke because they don't show up at the hearings. They write thousands of summonses on the right-of-way law, and almost all of them are dismissed because the cops don't show up at the hearings to say what happened. So they're fulfilling their quota, they're writing the summonses that the driver violated the right-of-way of the cyclist, but then the driver goes to the hearing, cop doesn't show up, ticket dismissed, and then they show up in the civil case, and they're like, well, my ticket was dismissed. The judge said I was right. Of course, that isn't what the judge said. It's just the cop didn't show up. The cops show up at the DMV when they write a moving violation. The cops show up at the administrative hearing when they seize an e-bike from a delivery worker. That's a heavy litigation. The cops are all over that. But when a cyclist is injured and a ticket's written for violating the right-of-way, the cops don't show up systematically, and so they're thrown out. So what can you do when the law enforcement system has these laws on the books that just aren't being enforced? How do you create some sort of message to drivers out there that there are consequences to never signaling, to never looking before open the door, to always speeding whenever there's enough road space in front of them to allow speeding? I don't know.
And with that, let's, what I'm hearing is that there are fucking many more questions, many more issues that we have to address, and that we should, seeing how this was a very Brooklyn populated audience and we've got 5 boroughs, we should probably do more of these bike tech events in every borough. Let's give a round of applause to Steve Vaccaro. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for feeding us and giving your words of wisdom. I have a very old one that's here. The next thing is I want to say thank you. I'm just going to close this out real quickly. So just 2 minutes of your attention. Thank you to the panelists with cameras with cycling. Thank you to the lightning presenters. We normally close with some solidarity and mutual aid conversations. I'm sad that we won't have, we can only do one, and so I'm going to give the microphone to Courtney, who's going to invite us all to an event.
Greetings, Brooklyn. So one of the things that I do, it was actually the very first job that I had as a consultant, was to give aid to a very great bike tour that is created by, it's the only organized bike tour in New York City that is organized by people of color for a neighborhood of color. It's called Bike East. It starts out of East New York. It will happen this year for the 6th year running, amen, on August the 17th. So there's a park called Linden Park, used to be Gershwin Park, whatever you want to call it. We do 20 miles. It grew from a handful of folks going 10 miles into 20 miles. We go to nearby destinations to show the neighborhood there's a reason to keep cycling beyond your streets, which don't have enough bike lanes, but they do have the Belt Parkway. So we're going to go from East New York and Brownsville onto the Belt Parkway to the illustrious Floyd Bennett Field, which is actually an aviation museum. People keep finding out it's actually a museum when they have to pee. And they're like, oh, there's airplanes in there. And then we turn around, go back, and have a wonderful just community time and party. So family paced. It's just a good time to get to know your neighbors. I am so thankful for everybody who ever came out to Ernest Askew's memorial vigil that we had last month. He was, number 14, I think. And so we would love if you would continue to celebrate and show the people of East New York and Brownsville who have not traditionally been supported and included in bicycle advocacy that you are there for them and that you would like to help them grow. Thank you so much. Just check it out, Bike East.
And we're all people on bikes, and so we need to be supporting each other, whether they're human-powered, pedal assist, or sometimes throttled. We're all out there. We're all vulnerable. And so we look forward to seeing you at other events where we're able to bring together the conversation of technology, data, and design to talk about how to improve our streets, keep ourselves safe. So get home safely. I'm sad to say that the L train is running on that fucked up shuttle service right now, but we're not too far away from the J. There is a city bike station around the corner. Hopefully your bike is still out here if you locked up to the scaffolding. The other courtesy that I ask is that if you please look around you, find a few elements of garbage to take to the waste bin, which is in the far back. If you want a beverage to take with you on the way out, please do so. Thank you, Internet Society, for recording this and live streaming it. Really appreciate it. Thank you, Bushwick Generator, for having us. And once again, thank you, Vaccaro and White, for sponsoring us this evening. Have a good night.